Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective, and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice in your everyday life. My name is Andy, and I work as operations manager here at IKYA Center in Oslo, Norway. And we hope you've had as nice a summer holidays as we've had. And as we come back to sort of real life, we are going to dive into an exciting topic tonight to also get your spiritual juices primed and ready to make the most of your path going forward from today. So remember that IKYA Live is both a news program and spiritual teachings meant to engage you and to lift your consciousness. And so we are dependent on you and your comments and questions to really bring tonight's topic to life and also to make it relevant for both you and other spiritual seekers. So be sure to write in your comments and questions below down in the chat here on YouTube Live. And we also have with us a live studio audience. So we are ready to engage you guys tonight. And engagement is really what tonight's topic is really all about. What we're looking at is, as humans, we have in us genetically this tendency to use the victim consciousness, and that has lots of different forms, from laziness to oh, poor me, and using it in power games and hierarchy to manipulate each other and to kind of justify holding ourselves back and really not engaging in life. But spiritually, that's not real healthy, and it doesn't really help us to get what we want and to learn everything that we're here to learn. So tonight, IKYA is going to unpack and help us look at moving out of that sort of classic victim consciousness and becoming truly proactive creators and leaders of our own lives and in the world around us. So without further ado, let's jump right in. But remember, we need you to engage. So write in your comments and questions, and also share tonight's episode right now across your social media so that everyone else can join in live. All right, IKYA. So as humans, we love to play the victim card. Why is that so important to us, and how are we going to get out of it? Let's get started.
Right. I've talked about this before, so if you're new to this, when we look at human evolution, we have two main strategies of getting what we want, and that is basically to survive, right? One is to achieve, it's to fight, it's to go out there and be ambitious and succeed that way. If that doesn't work for you, you can basically, draw attention to yourself and then get what you want that way by playing the victim. Now, think of the human brain still being very tribal. And in a tribe, we have to work together to survive, right? But in a tribe, we take care of each other as well, based on the assumption that we all chip in, we all contribute. Now, to survive, we just want stuff, we need stuff, and whatever works, because ultimately survival means that you're winning. So we have developed different strategies, right? It benefits us for the most part to contribute and to do things. But then we also figured out, when I'm sick, I can make people do things for me. And then if I just don't feel like it, I can also fake it. And obviously that was very successful to the degree that we're all like that today. So, it's been an important part of human survival. But for society to survive and thrive, this is a card we should not be kind of playing that often. And now we're doing it more than ever. And we need to look at why is that. And it is, of course, because it's plan B. Now, when we feel like that we can't get to the position or like to win the regular way, we're then programmed to try to win the other way. Because if you want stuff and you can't win, you can whine and complain and then get it that way. So you have to create the story that, well, I couldn't do it because I was sick. Just think of all the people you know, and maybe yourself, the excuses you've made up in your life for why you've not been successful, right? So many people say, well, you know, I was really supposed to be a model. Everybody wanted me to be one, but of course I chose my studies, right? Or like something inequivalent. We have a tendency to make up stories about something more important or our weakness, right? That we were sick, so we couldn't, right? So I was really, you know, an Olympic athlete, but, you know, all of a sudden I get sick. We make up stories to justify to ourselves why we're not winning. And because most of us are not winning, our brains will continuously produce victim stories so we can live with ourselves, because then it's not our fault, is it? If it hadn't been for that thing, we would have totally won everything. And because we don't. Like, think of it, in a tribe, it's a very small group, so you don't need that brain function very often. Then you have a village, a small town, and a city, and now we have the whole civilization. How often do you win? Not very often, because the mountain keeps getting higher. And fewer can win, because now it's not just about being the best in your tribe, in your village. Not even the best in your country, it's the best in the world. So most people can't be. And how we can live with ourselves is then giving ourselves the excuses about why we are really the winner. Sometimes it's basically that we judge the people who win and say, well, they're terrible people, you know. I'm a better person than that. They just focus on that, right? It's, for instance, if you want money and you don't have any, you often will start judging people who have money and say, well, they're just rotten to the core, right? I'm a good person. I chose to be a good person, to have a good heart. So that's why I don't have money. And they're just corrupt, because you've not been able to have a successful life. We do it all the time, but because there's so many areas where we don't feel that we're winning, we will be gravitating towards a victim consciousness. And it's not just one thing, right? Our state of consciousness, our state of mind, consists of thousands and thousands of different thoughts and emotions. So it's that tapestry, right, that becomes the wallpaper. And that wallpaper will tell us where we are. And it's also, when you look at young people today, we've made a great mistake in the West by wanting to shield our kids from any bad feelings, any difficulties. It's natural that we want our kids to feel good. But when we don't expose them to difficulties and, you know, bad feelings and terrible experiences, they don't learn how to regulate themselves, how to deal with challenges. We need the balance between, you know, when a child is trying to learn how to ride a bike and, you know, she falls off or he falls off, then often it's been the mother who's been comforting, say, oh, you know, this will be all right, you know, come here, have a piece of candy. And dad will say, get back up, right? Stop crying, get back on the bike now. And we've stopped doing that part, which means that you think that your emotions are extremely important. And not only that, a kid will gravitate towards whatever behavior will give him or her the prize. So when you are rewarded for your weaknesses, when you are rewarded for being the victim, when you are rewarded for your excuses, that's what you will be doing. When you try to achieve something great, it will hurt. You will get injured, right? And you need to be able to deal with that. And it takes for children to be exposed to that and to push themselves and to be pushed. And also learn that, yeah, what you're feeling is pain. It's part of life. Try again. So when not wanting to do something, when we feel bad, and that is being used as an excuse, and then being rewarded, right, for listening to his feelings, we are encouraging victim consciousness. So we've done a lot of weird things in our society, and because we want everyone to feel good. But when we want to feel good, we gradually will become victims. Again, whenever we attempt anything of value, it will hurt. And we've forgotten that. There's a price to everything. So, what I often say is that, like victimhood and entitlement, same thing. An entitlement and ambition can actually have the same starting point. And it's basically how you're trained that will decide which one. Because ambition is you wanting your life to change, or you want something, right? But ambition means that you understand you have to make the change. You have to work for it. It's your responsibility. Entitlement is wanting the same and wanting the changes, but you believe that it's someone else's responsibility to make it happen. And when we have, in our part of the world, to create a society where that can actually happen and where that way of thinking will be rewarded, you have in your genetic programming so much of it that you can't stop, you can't help yourself. So most people today are full of victim stories, full of entitlement, full of excuses. So they don't even have to try. So entitlement means that we don't really feel that we need to try because it's up to other people to invite us, to give us, to include us, to understand us. You don't go out and slay that way. You never win that way. So when we also look at how we have built a consumer society based on bad feelings, I've talked about this extensively. We have basically a misery industrial complex feeding off of us being miserable. Because whenever we feel bad, we want to self-medicate. And it's also because, as a child, most of us, we were rewarded when we felt bad, right? That's when you get the extra whatever it is. You get extra attention, extra snacks, you can be home from school, whatever, right? So you get what you want emotionally when you feel bad. How does that train you? So when you feel bad, that's when you deserve something, right? Whenever you have any bad feeling, bad luck, whenever you feel you need to excuse yourself, whenever you're not winning, you're now hardwired to seek compensation in form of self-medication. It can be something you eat, something you buy, something you consume. It can be entertainment, all of that. So it is in the interest of the big corporations that we feel awful, that we feel terrible, that we are depressed and miserable in all sorts of ways, so that we will buy more stuff and eat more shit. Because, when you felt bad, Did your mom give you broccoli? Probably not. Right? So you do not associate your bad feelings and then being listened to and understood with healthy food, but with sugar, with snacks, right? With all the unhealthy stuff. So whenever you feel, I deserve something, it's not broccoli you're looking for. Today, I need to focus on my needs. In our part of the world, it's all we do. But we're all groomed into feeling bad about everything. And that combined with a world where we simply cannot win anymore. You will have an endless lust for self-medication. And an endless need to have your emotions met and to be understood. So basically, we have created a world where people grow up with the expectation that they should be received, celebrated, understood, nurtured, because they're worth it. And then, of course, it's not how it works. Because we all feel that way. So when you feel that other people should do that to you, they feel the same way about you, and both are sitting there waiting to be served. So we all feel bad, and then we self-medicate. So we're all victims by and through our own expectations. And this is what we need to crush today. It ends right here, if you wanted to. But the thing is, we need to understand that we're all brainwashed. Right? We're all completely brainwashed. So we feel bad, and most of the bad feelings you have, and that whole complex where you constantly feel you have to make up excuses or judge yourself, it's a result of you being brainwashed since the time of birth. And it turns you into a victim. And it makes you feel powerless, because that's the essence of victimhood. Feeling that you have no power, and then you behave that way. And instead of building, doing it your way, you spend your time consuming to compensate. If you think of all the energy and resources you channel into self-medication for your bad feelings, which is pretty much the motivation behind every purchase. If you took all of that energy and channeled it into building your life, right? If you bought more broccoli, meaning if you invested in your life, in what can make you a winner, your life would be very, very different. And there's another thing that is really interesting, which I can see also in the West. Now, understand that entitlement and victimhood means that you believe that someone else has the power, right? So you shouldn't have to do anything. That's the story, but they should see you. In your brain, learning and knowledge are connected to survival skills. Back in the day when we were tribal, living in small villages, learning was about giving you the life skills you need in order to survive and to contribute to your tribe or group, right? So it's connected to your sense of survival. Once you believe that, that's not my responsibility. That's other people. Why should you learn? And this is also what we're seeing in our part of the world, that it's difficult often for young people to find the motivation to learn, because learning is connected to survival skills. And when they think that's not my responsibility, the brain says, well, then we don't have to learn anything. So learning turns into entertainment. And this is also why in schools we see that learning has to become more entertaining. Because otherwise, why would any kid want to learn? Right? Because we start and we emphasize the victimhood and we justify it. So, when we don't feel we are responsible for our own survival, learning becomes just entertainment. And we demand that it's entertaining. And then, of course, when you grow up, and then you have a degree in whatever entertains you, and that does not give you a well-paid job, you blame society, right? Because you're so valuable, you should be paid. And back to your expectation, life doesn't work that way. Whatever value you bring and how it's valued is up to other people, it's not up to you. And then you feel like a victim yet again. Because why shouldn't I have the right to do or work with whatever I find interesting? Survival is not about that. It's doing what it takes, right? And we can do both, but in our part of the world, we've completely lost balance, completely lost track of what is important, and we can see it. And again, we all swim around in this pool of self-victimization, false expectation, self-medication, being manipulated by big corporations, right? And it's very difficult to get out of it. But I will show you how to if you're actually interested. We have a question?
Yes, we have a question in the audience.
Yeah, this is such an interesting topic, and it's so many places I can kind of see where this plays out. You've talked about this before in some of the IKYA live sessions about how, for example, in the US, I'm an American, so in the US you kind of grow up with this idea that if you pull yourself up by the bootstraps, this rags to riches dream, that you'll be successful. And which is also why so many people from all around the world, cross the border in Mexico to try to get into the country. And yet when they get there, they find out that it doesn't work that way. Without capital, without means, is very, very, very unlikely. And so then it kind of falls into the whole blame game.
Yeah.
And you see this so much in politics right now, where it's all about blame, rather than what are we actually going to do to fix it. It's all about blame. I'd love to hear you comment more about that.
Yes. I think what's happening in the United States is quite interesting because the American dream, which is that, anyone can be anything, it only works for as long as you have enough evidence, or at least enough stories that people take as evidence. But now there is a lot of evidence of the opposite, right? And when people see that it's not happening, their brain goes, oh, victim, that's how I can win. So it's blaming, it's entitlement. And when you look at a lot of young people in the States, they have given up, right? Because they realize that, oh, I can't win, but I have all these expectations. So now the brain goes, well, let me show you how to win. Be a victim. Because that's how, again, you draw attention to yourselves and will force people to take care of you. So it's that. It's when we collectively understand that we can't win. So that's really what's happening, and it's extremely dangerous for a civilization, and it's also interesting to watch. But it's always up to you, each and every one of us, to understand how we can take charge, how we can change, because we can. But we need to understand the level of collective kind of grooming and brainwashing and programming that will turn us all into self-medicating victims. And that will become our true profession. Most people today are professional victims. They spend all their money, all their resources, all their energy on trying to compensate for their emotions and feelings of victimhood somehow. And also because, first, we create these ideas and the expectations, right, that are far beyond what most of us can reach. And then we will also start feeling like a loser for having a normal life because we expect more. And what do? You buy more shit, right? So it's part of what prints money. So this is really what the modern slavery is. It's not a production slavery. It's a victimization slavery, because when you're kept in the victim state, corporations can just milk you. And they don't even have to do that, because you will go take my money, because you will need your fix. You will need more fixes, several fixes a day. So you're doing it voluntarily. So you're basically behaving like a slave. Right? But again, we think of slavery as producing stuff. You are producing money for the big machine. And all they need to do is to stimulate you in such a way that you have to become a victim. Even when you win in your life, well, that's one win. You will have 500 losses. And they all demand self-medication. So we need to figure out how we can grow out of this, and we can.
We have another question in the audience.
Yeah, thank you for the interesting perspective from the U.S. society, Rick. So I'm Norwegian, and in Norway we have the welfare state, which provides a social net for everyone that we're very proud of. But I wonder what is then kind of opposite from the U.S. society in one way, and what is then the consequence of that for what you describe as the entitlement society?
Oh, this is an entitlement society. And I think in Europe, where one chose a path of more social security and support, it's a wonderful safety net when you know it's a safety net. But when you grow up in it, you take it for granted, and that's a career option, right? Because you don't really have to. So you don't have to be productive. You don't have to take responsibility, right? And then you just want someone else to take the wheel, whether it be government or corporations. So, right? So we, in Europe, chose the government model. You take my money through taxes, and just like, you know, in the state, they do the same thing, but with corporations. Same thing. Because humans prefer to be victims. Because again, when you can have one win and 500 losses, in a society, the more complexity we have, the more you will feel like a loser. Right? So we're all being kind of like pushed in the same direction, and we're all dealing with it the same way, and we're also, unfortunately, teaching our kids the wrong things from a survival point of view. And I also try to inspire parents to teach their kids about real survival and how to become a winner, because we can all be winners. We just have to understand kind of what we're good at, the playing field, and regulate our expectations and take responsibility in all that. Like, one thing that is really, really important to understand spiritually, which is the opposite of this collective mush that we're in right now. And we can see, well, we want everyone to feel good, blah, blah, blah. Look at the result. This is also what I tell parents. When they want their kids to never feel anything bad, to be very protective, look at the result. So, now, when you look at your own reality, your reality only consists of what you have done. Think of it, you are in the kitchen with other people, you have all ingredients possible. Only what you make belongs to you. That is your life. So, if you do not love your life will not love you. Life itself will love you, just like the kitchen has everything. But unless you get cooking, you have nothing. So, every second is an investment because your life is the result of whatever you're sending out. And only that. Because it's only when you get cooking that you will have something. Spiritually, that's how you also expand. So, wanting something, that's not making it. Manifesting through imagination, it's not cooking. You may come up with an idea or a recipe, but it's not cooking. And you have nothing until you're done. So think of your emotions. Think of every emotion you have and think that that is what will be reflected. Those are the building materials that will kind of turn into matter. Your thoughts, your ideas, your beliefs, your attitudes, your energy, all of that. That will turn into what is your life, not life itself. Right? And the thing is to, therefore, as I talk about all the time, learn to never react. Learn to only send out what you actually want instead. Because when we react, it's often to something we don't want. And when you vibrate it, well, that's what you get. So whatever happens, the technique is take a step back and remind yourself, what do I want instead? And force yourself to vibrate that. Because when you understand that you exist in this life space, and just like in the kitchen, you have access to everything. You go, oh, I'm rich. You are not. But you can bring home what you bake. And we need to learn that. And how you bake, how you cook is whatever you actively send out. When you complain, when you're a victim, when you allow yourself to indulge in negative feelings, that's what you get. When you feel that everything is unfair and you have nothing, that's what you get. When you criticize others, that's what you get. Right? The key is to understand that what belongs to you is only what you have baked or cooked. So, when you decide to take a step back and say, well, what energy represents what I want? Only do that. Whenever you react, you'll create more of what you don't want. Simply because something exists doesn't mean that it belongs to you or that you should have it. That other people have it, sure, somehow they created it. So you are in a world of all ingredients possible. Get cooking. Right? But it's not wishful thinking. It's never the thoughts or the feelings that, ooh, I don't have what I deserve. Why can I never have what I want? Because that is then manifesting that you will not have it. So the key is always to take a step back when you react to something and say, what do I actually want instead? So take it as an opportunity to send out what you want. But in our society, because of the victimization, and most people then feel like losers and, that we have not learned to regulate our emotions anymore. Most people are sending out victim state energy, victim state thoughts, victim state, emotions 24/7. They have negative thoughts about themselves and about life, and they broadcast that. That is what you get. Again, if you do not love your life will not love you. It's very simple. And when you say, well, I just feel this way, don't. You have to learn to regulate. This is, again, bad parenting if you don't know how to do it. It's the lack of, I would say, the healthy, balanced masculine energies and like, get back on the bike. I don't care if you're crying. We're not doing that right now. Right? Life skills. Tribalism. Right? If you wanted to learn, how to do something, could be gather food, it could be like whatever was necessary, that could be dangerous. But the tribe would need for you as a child to learn this so that the whole tribe could survive. So they would not care about your feelings. If you got injured, so keep going, right? But when we then believe that my survival is your responsibility, I shouldn't have to do anything. I shouldn't have to experience this or that. And we lose our ability to self-regulate emotions, thoughts, whatever it is, and focus on what is more important. Right? So we need to learn this because we now have a couple of generations of adults. If you talk to like really old people, they learned how to do this, right? They think all people today are too soft because they can see it. They learn how to self-regulate because they had to, and we need to start doing that again. If you want to move out of victimization, and if you wonder, why am I stuck in this? This is why. And it's tough. Sure, you have to learn to do things and not care about how you feel about it. If you get injured, if, all of that, you need to be able to set goals and reach them. Because in the tribe, if that was your job and the group depended on it, you had to, right? So we have it in us. But we've just, in our civilization, our current civilization, made some very strange choices, understandably so, right? Because we want everyone to feel comfortable and we all gravitate towards it. But systemically, it's very unhealthy, and spiritually, we fall asleep. Spiritual awakening starts with survival. And actually, not only that, mastering your survival. So you have to move in that direction. We'll unpack it more. Do we have any more questions?
Yes, we have another question in the audience.
Yes, hello. I would like to hear your perspective more around this on parenting, because I believe that in a tribe we need to have kids that are emotionally developed, and
let me ask you, why?
Because then we can work better together, I believe, and see each other. Because we are humans.
That's not an answer. Of course, we're humans. Why is it important to have emotional people?
I mean, in the end, you can only take responsibility for yourself. And if people around you are emotional human beings, you need to be emotionally developed in order to be with them.
How, just like, how does that correlate to survival in any way? How does that bring food on the table? How does that protect the group?
I think that it helps the group to feel more safe together.
That's a weakness. If they need to feel safe, that's a threat.
But if you are in a state where you feel safe,
yes,
you can be more effective and creative.
No, actually you can't. There is absolutely no evidence of that. It means that you will do more useless things. True. But for most people, they are more productive when they feel they have to, when they're pushed. Let's say you have a deadline. Right. Most people, they need deadlines and threats. They need to feel that what I do now matters. If you feel, I just do whatever, just listen to your, like what you want to express, we will not be productive. And not only that, when it comes to inventions and innovation, right? Humans have never been more innovative than during the Second World War. That is the high point of human creativity in human history. So no, it's not when we feel safe, when we feel emotionally balanced. It's when we feel the opposite. Because then we're triggered that what I do now matters. I have to come up with something. Then we do the impossible, not when we're comfortable.
Okay.
And this is part of the misunderstanding we have, believing that the solution is in our emotions. It never is. It gets in the way. Emotions are wonderful, but they need to be regulated. And what we've seen when we have too much focus on feeling safe, it means that we deal with things less. Because it means that we believe that how we feel about something matters. So instead of actually doing the task, what one also sees, for instance, when people are more practical, they get things done. So, for instance, if you go out and let's say that you hunt together, right? It's not about how you feel, it's about being focused. And what happens is you have different emotions. You can have emotions of togetherness, of being on the team, right? Of doing something significant together, of feeling responsibility, being excited. All of these things, without talking about them, of being emotional, it's the result of you doing something that actually has purpose. So throughout evolution, humans already have a lot of bandwidth when it comes to emotions, but they're connected to what we do. They come to help us regulate our behavior in such a way that they are productive and purposeful. When we start with emotions, it ends up with doing things as pure emotional masturbation and then thinking that other people should find this significant. So, when you look at human progress, it happens as the result of stress and fear and difficulty. It's a complete illusion that when we are safe and happy, then we're being very creative. The creativity is self-absorbed. It's not the type of creativity that brings the world forward. There is all, like, when we look at all evidence throughout human history, this is what we see. You can still create enormous works of beauty under the threat. For instance, a lot of artists throughout history, they worked for kings and, the church and all of that, right? If they didn't deliver, they could be beheaded or they would be killed. So a lot of the greatest artworks would not be made because the artist felt like it. It was because they had some ruler who wanted something that was spectacular so he could brag about it to everyone. And the artist would oh, this is a big opportunity, but if you fail, that's how great art is made. Real great art. So understand that the whole emotional spectrum is supposed to be adding kind of color and depth and kind of regulate our behaviors so that they are purposeful. But without those behaviors, an overemphasis on emotions and believing that they in themselves are important, is basically saying in a factory, we should just work on how they interact and how they move. It's not why they're there. It's to make things. Right? It's only when we start what are we actually doing and why, then emotions can come to add. But on their own, they become a distraction, and they will always, always lead you to victimhood, without exception.
So we've got a follow-up question on YouTube. Doesn't the brain work more efficiently when it's not under stress? And I'm hearing you say that's not true, but how is it then that we're coming to this collective conclusion that we should, be in harmony and peace in order to have, to do well and be creative and all that?
That's an interesting question, because now there are two different types of absence of stress. Now, in a low consciousness, you don't want to change, you don't want to move, because biologically you're supposed to just survive, and when you do, you sit still. So evolution happens as a result of stress. It's just like it's stress because your environment has changed. And then what you do that used to work, it's not working anymore. And then you're stressed, and that will trigger mutation, which is also a biological process where you will have a lot of different stress reactions causing your biology to do weird things. And that is basically evolution, right? And then psychologically, same thing will happen to people. Oh, maybe we should do that, maybe we should do that. That's when ideas come. And people will just do weird things. Some people will be just like in fear. Someone will take leadership. Some people this or that. But overall, something will work, because we need that trigger in order to do anything and do much of it. Otherwise, when we're happy, we're sitting, we can sit in the yard with friends and have a beer and then oh, maybe I should do this. We should totally start a band. Right? That's the type, it's not necessarily something that will lead the world forward. So it's a different type of creativity. But when we look at true harmony, which is something else, that is not absence from stress. Harmony is the ability to completely be in line with your life and life around you. So it's the absence of reaction because you are developed. Balance comes from within. It's not about life not being stressful. It's about you not having stressful reactions, because you know how to deal with things. Now, when one takes brain scans of people who've been in meditation for most of their lives, like real meditation, not taking a course, but people who are like monks who've been sitting in meditation for 40 years, one can see something interesting. It's not just that more of the brain is activated at the same time. One can see that like more of the brain lights up. There are actually physical changes. Now, when you look at less advanced animals, the brains are kind of smoother. The human brain is like, it goes up and down, it has these valleys and the creases and all of that, right? And you see that the more intelligent a life form is, the more kind of creases and ups and downs the brain will have. And for instance, when you look at then monkeys and apes, they will have a smoother brain. Now, when you then look at the brains of people who've been meditating a lot, they have even more creases than a normal human. They become more advanced. So they basically go through their own personal evolution. And physically, their brain will look different and operate differently. That's where harmony comes from. So it's not making sure that nobody feels anything bad. That will actually do the opposite. It would smooth out your brain. It will make you less advanced and will make you be able to tolerate less. Right? And this is what we're trying to do in our society. We're trying to pad everything so no one should have to feel anything they don't want to, which means that we're not able to deal with anything important, because that is always difficult. So, you're absolutely right that in that state, because we're mastering our own existence, creativity is limitless. And it's not then limited to survival, but in that state, we know that. We're connected to what is beyond our own survival and our own life. So creativity will flow, and we have ideas simply because we can. And we have no resistance to growth. We have no resistance to purpose. We have no resistance to go beyond our own needs. So creativity will be more about, can we create great stuff? Can we do something of purpose beyond me? But in the lower state of consciousness, harmony is, I get what I want and nobody disturb me, please. Right? So this is why there are two different types. And in that state, you need to be pushed. It's only the fight for survival that will make you do anything of importance. And this is also why you see most people in our society, when they have the chance, they will sit down and do nothing. And that's the dream most people have. Win the lottery so they can just sit down and do absolutely nothing and just self-medicate to death. Right? Because that comes with a state of consciousness, and that comes with too many emotions, and believing that the emotional complex should decide what we do.
All right, we have a question in the audience.
Yes, I recognize the complete logic in everything you're saying, and I want to ask if we can get into like the practical core of this. Like as an individual, anyone, I recognize that, okay, I have all this victim kind of stuff going on. How does an individual like take him or herself from that point to another point in practical terms?
Yes. Excellent question. And now we're getting into it, because basically what we need to understand is the premise of what will turn you into a victim. And it is expectation. It's always expectation and disappointment. And believing that it's because of someone else. Because also then it's not your fault, right? You become the victim of something that's happening. So, what we need to understand, I often say that, but life owes you nothing. Right? It's going into this kitchen for the first time and say like, why is not someone giving me something? I'm hungry. Right? Life owes you nothing. So it's learning that. And as I said, also understanding that life is only what you invest. It's only what you produce. It's only what you send out. Your thoughts, emotions, actions. It's only that, because that is your life. That's your space. So we need to understand that. And also understand that no one will do anything for you unless it benefits them. Right? The thing is that we have this sort of expectation that we can be greedy little bitches and everybody else should be unconditional. You know? So we need to understand that when humans are in their low consciousness, it's all transactional. And one thing that is also very important to understand, nobody cares about you. And this, when we understand that, that can make your victim consciousness implode. Because we want to believe that other people care about us. And my question, why should they? That's your job. You are on your journey spiritually. If people care about you, it's because they care about themselves and see you as a vehicle for that. You're the same. It's a mutual exchange, hopefully. Right? You care about someone because they care about you and all of that. And we can learn to grow into the heart. But that's, for most people, that's not the starting point. And we have to understand that most people today operate in a lower consciousness than they did even a decade ago. People are becoming more like animals because of victimization. So, understand that nobody cares about you. They don't have to, right? Your life is what you invest, and you have that freedom. When people don't care about you, you don't have to live up to their expectation. You're free. And also, you are only valuable if you add value in the eyes of others. It's back to that, I should be loved. No. Life loves you, not other people. Right? And we're basically taught to believe that I'm valuable. Value is a transactional concept. You're only valuable for as long as you add value. And then the question is, are you? A victim is hardly ever adding value. So the story that I'm valuable by default, so I should have stuff, that is entitlement. And most people have that thought today. You are only as valuable as the value you add. And the price of that is not for you to decide. Is it valuable to others? And how much so? Right? And also understand that your opinions and value systems are completely insignificant. They're worthless to others. You start out as being completely worthless. And that's your blank canvas. It's understanding you should care about your life. You have the opportunity. You have your own spot in the kitchen. You've been given every ingredient on the planet. The rest is up to you. That is both the beauty and the brutality of spiritual truth. And whenever you think that someone else should be doing the cooking and I'm good at tasting, you will be a victim. When you realize that, this is my existence, my life, all of this are given so I can transform, I can do something with it, but nobody cares. And since life only reflects what I actually do, I should always be happy. Because this is actually, what I did. And I can learn. Back to motivation. To learn, you need to be motivated. And when you understand that, right, I can study anything, I can learn anything, I can do anything, I can be anything, and that will be my life. That's also how you practically move out of victim consciousness, because any expectation that is not about you will turn you into a victim. So you start by learning to think this way, right? And truly think and truly see it until you fully see it and you see the freedom and opportunity in that. Because if you enter the kitchen and you think this is a restaurant, an open buffet just for me, you will suffer You can starve to death. And yet life has given you an opportunity, given you everything, but you don't know how to make use of it, right? And this is where our civilization right now is completely off the rails. So we don't even understand the opportunities that we have in life. And also how the physics of life works. Basically meaning that what you invest, it will be there. What you send out, that's what manifests. And often when people try to manifest, right, they have first this flood wave of negativity and self-pity. And then they sit down in meditation and have like a constructive thought. Now I'm going to manifest, right? Maybe it's 0.1% of what they send out. And then they don't understand why it's not manifesting. We need to move out of this brainwashing. And it starts by understanding the beautiful but harsh realities as a starting point. Because also when we understand that life is only and exclusively what I make of it, and we see that as a great thing, you're already, by kind of default in a way, out of victimization. Because then you will never blame. You will never excuse. And you will always see that what I want to achieve, if it's not working well, then I can learn. Then it's my skills combined with the resources, and if I don't know how to do it or how to apply the resources, I will not have the result, but I can learn. Then you'll have success. When someone is able to achieve enormous success in a field, it's because, sure, they've done it before. They've built those skills, not necessarily in this lifetime. Right? They may be really good at something and suck at something else. Right? We're hardly all able to do everything, and we don't have to. Just like in the kitchen, right? Some people enjoy doing pastries, and some, do savory this or that. Some will just do sauces. But we can still be really good at what we do, just like in a tribe. When we find our thing, and our thing may not be what we feel like doing. It's actually what we may have talents for. And sometimes our talents and what we want to do are two different things. So it's also learning that. But in a tribe, every single person will have to find their place in how to produce beyond their own needs. Because that's basically what goes back to the tribe, making sure that everyone gets what they need. So that's really the job and the responsibility, right? And also, as I always talk about, purpose only happens when it's beyond self-interest. That's also the genetic programming. So in a tribe, right, because when you go out and hunt, and you only hunt for what you need, you're supposed to feel bad. Because you're selfish. Because your job is also to get food for others because they do other things that include you. So when you also hunt and you get more food for everyone, you will feel good about yourself. You will feel a sense of purpose. And you will feel proud. You will feel that you've done something significant. Because you have. And when we don't feel that we're doing something purposeful, it's because we're not. It's not that we can just say, well, I killed a little rabbit and that will be enough for me, but I'm still valuable for the tribe. You're not. So throughout evolution, we have learned, and our brains have developed, to guide us. And this is a thing when we're all full of self-medication and entertainment and drugs and whatever it is. We have lost the ability to relate to our genetics and our brains and our brain chemistry as the most important tools to guide us. Because we just want to feel, and we're just manipulating ourselves all the time. But when we are balanced, we can pretty much also use our emotions to feel our way, because the brain will kind of regulate its signals based on what is productive, what enhances not just your survival, but your advancement. We're talking, millions of years of evolution here. And it's still relevant. But in our society, in our current civilization, we've completely lost track because of all these levels of manipulation. But it's in us. So we can also spiritually learn to kind of like realign our brains and our bodies so it becomes kind of more productive. So it's in all of us. It's completely natural. And I think often, I talk a lot with different therapists, and also no matter what line of therapy they're working with, it's like the job today is to just kind of let a human being realign itself with itself and our nature. Just in our biology, we have so many different kind of settings and tools and ways of working. We just have to stop the nonsense, right? And that can take a combination of dieting, spiritual work, therapy, education, but we have to kind of work our way out of the nonsense that we're currently in as a civilization, and that's an individual responsibility, but we can all do it. So, your question is on point, how do we do it? And it takes so many things, but it has to be concrete. It's number one, recognizing that where we are historically is very unhealthy, and we've kind of lost the plot, and we've told ourselves lies about what life should be about, and look at the result, where most people are miserable. Most people are self-medicating. Spirituality today is just bullshit. And people are confused and angry and aggressive, and it's just getting worse, and then we self-medicate more, need more entertainment, and just, we need to zoom out and look at it and say, well, okay, I can do better. And then we have to do the job ourselves, because it's the only way we can have any credibility when it comes to also assisting others. But we need to focus on survival skills. Right, because one way also to work with our own psychology is that, okay, if I only could rely on myself, how would I behave? Right, because survival is, I have to do something in order to provide for myself, practically, emotionally, mentally. Also in society, what do I do? If I am fully responsible, right? Learning to take that full responsibility. Humans used to have that, but we've kind of lost it. But we need to go back there, right? And that responsibility basically is you actualizing that your life is exclusively what you create, nothing else. And the result you're getting is not down to attempt, it's down to your actual skills. If you buy a fishing rod and you try to fish and you don't get any fish, it's not the fishing rod, it's you. Maybe you're in the wrong place, maybe you haven't figured out how to do it right. It tells you something about your skills, right? So it's always taking that responsibility and confronting ourselves. So step one is going through all the sentences as life owes you nothing and all of that, and fully understanding it. And then, are you taking responsibility for everything in your life. And then looking at in what areas are you not taking the full responsibility? I mean the full responsibility. And then we have to go through area after area and say, okay, how do I turn this around? How do I actually take responsibility for my own existence, right? My own growth, my own success, whatever it is, right? So then we have to do that. And then let go of expectations. All expectations that include other people. All of them. And what we do today, collectively, is we expect so much of everything, right? Our gadgets, like, they're just supposed to work, right? Everything is just supposed to work. And we take responsibility for nothing. And we're rewarded for not taking responsibility, because when we sue someone and we get money, yay, that's a jackpot. And in the States, being a lawyer is like, for many, this is what they do, right? They hunt down people who can say, well, you can sue and we can make money. It's an industry. Being a victim is how you win. So taking full responsibility and going through every single area of your life and take that responsibility, and then take away every expectation. Because we have a tendency to expect life to operate in a way that it doesn't. So that we apply our skill set in a way that is not productive, and then we lose. So we need to remove expectations and then allow ourselves to explore based on our own skill set. Remember also, if you lived in a village or a tribe, right? And your family were the only family responsible for hunting, right? You wouldn't know if there were better ways. They didn't know. You were the best thing ever, right? You were the best hunter in that tribe. And yet, you could be a terrible hunter, but nobody would know, right? Because expectations would not exist. So when we add complexity and we compare ourselves to others, we expect too much of ourselves and others, and then anything and everything becomes a disappointment, right? Think of, for instance, when you go to a restaurant or order food or whatever, how often are you disappointed? Every time. And it's because of the expectation. But if we go back 500 years and you let that person order food, and the food is like, it's a miracle, right? It would be like just like the most amazing thing ever, right? Because that person would have very different expectations to life. So again, based on the complexity, we place our expectations on top without having the skill set to match. So we feel disappointed all the time, and it's poison, right? We're poisoning ourselves, we're poisoning everyone. And then also, we need to protect our feelings because we feel so bad, right? It's just, we do all of this nonsense and we have to work our way out of it. But the harsh realities, that's where we start. The harsh confrontations and wanting to take full responsibility and living that responsibility and learn to never expect anything of anyone, right? And always look at the result as the outcome of your own skills. And that's it. Then we can learn to be happy, because whatever happens, that's just what you know so far, right? Basically, if you want to learn how to farm and you're not very good at it, right? Your first crop may not be the best, right? But it's your crop. That's the result of what you're able to do, right? And then you will learn, and next year you will do better. It's that. We need to learn to appreciate what we're actually doing and having fun with it. But if you start out and you expect to have like, industrial-sized crops from the first year, you will be so disappointed and so sad. And that's really where we are today. So letting go of expectations and looking at our skills and how our skills kind of meet the world and the opportunities, that's kind of like, then you're basically walking and building your way out of victim consciousness. So it's not difficult, right? It's just like we exist now in this misunderstanding and making us all miserable. And that's what the corporations want. So when you also realize that you're a slave and you have no idea, if you want freedom, you have to work your way out of this.
Yes, we have a question in the audience.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about. For some reason, I'm experiencing this weird conflict between what you're explaining and being in love. What is that about?
Well, because being in love can be many different things.
Living in love, sort of.
Yes. Now, I will just first explain the two types of being in love. The typical thing in a low consciousness, which is the normal state for human, is more of that narcissistic recognition that you first have created a fantasy about the other person, which of course means that it's a perfect match. And this person meets you, sees you, and fulfills all your needs. And then you both do that. So you're both basically psychotic. And you're on this exchange in psychosis. And then over time, you will get to know that other person. And then you're not in love anymore. The other way, which is more connected to spiritual awakening, is when the heart is actually involved, which is in a way the opposite. And often falling in love and being in love and living from love is getting to know someone. And they don't even have to be a perfect match, right? You just observe them and you enjoy their energy and that they're not you, right? And all the weirdness and all, whatever it is, and you realize that they don't have to be a match. I feel so honored to be part of this and for that person to share themselves with me, right? And you want to give, you want to nurture, and that is more what we refer to as a kind of vertical state, where the love is real and it's not connected to your survival. Because love is what happens when you move past survival. And this is also why most people today, they are so thirsty for love, they seek it and they can't find it, because it's only a selfish thing, right? But love is something else entirely, because it's giving and receiving without expectation. It is in a state where you are in full acceptance, and it's unconditional. So it's very different. Yes.
And to clarify,
Can you turn the microphone on?
I meant being in love, like living in love.
Yes.
Like in a spiritual way, not
Yes.
with a person,
No.
but yeah.
Exactly. But the thing is, when we are living from the heart, we're already past survival. Because we recognize that when we fill ourselves with love, all our needs are met. Because, I've talked about this extensively, but when we have a need, It's basically the brain recognizing there is something wrong, right? I have, you know, I need water, for instance, so you'll be thirsty, and unless you drink, you will die. So it's connected to your survival, right? So all needs are that in different ways. It could be also social survival, whatever. Love is that when you fill yourself with love and when you're able to open yourself to it, the experience that most people have also in meditation is that they have no needs. It's just there because love is the sum of everything. It's where we all end up. No matter, you know, our approach, what we do, spiritually, what technique, whatever, it always brings us to love at some point. It's because love goes beyond the self. It goes beyond needs. And it's a state of purpose. Right? Because you cannot be in a state of love and make it about yourself. The typical thing that most experience is that when we allow spiritual love to flow through, we are extremely present, but we have no self-interest. And for many, that could be confusing, right? But it's completely natural because then it's about connectedness, it's about sharing, it's about co-creation. And it means through that, all your needs will be met because survival at that point means you're a cell of life. And life will flow through you. It means also what you do and what you express will be in harmony with life. And it will be purposeful. And it will not be about you, your survival, your needs, your emotions, your expectations, because you don't care. It's a state where you feel that you've reached the goal. You've come home. So everything you do in order to get to that level, it just melts away. So yes, I understand that one can see that there is a conflict between the two states when you look at them. But everything we do through working with our karma and going through all of this, and now today we're talking about victim consciousness as one thing we can look at, but we can look, we need to look at every aspect of our journey and then heal, improve, and learn, expand, and then we reach love. Right? So it is the end point of every process, hopefully. And what we also learn is the more we allow love and the more we experience it, the more we understand that when we're in a process, we aim for love. We realize that, oh, right, I can let go of that. That thing is not really important. That conflict is not important. That need is not important. So in many ways, working with the heart for real is also the way out of this whole victimization, self-medication cycle. Right? Because when you experience that divine love, you're certainly not a victim. You experience yourself as part of creation, as part of a pulsating, loving, ever-expanding creation. So of course, this is one of the great benefits of spiritual work, right, is that we are able to assist ourselves to lift consciousness. And this is, next to the practical things that we also talked about, how to, in our daily lives as humans, how do we retrain ourselves? Of course, it's always, as lift your consciousness, open your heart. If we do both, we will succeed.
We've got a question. Oh, sorry. We've got a question in the audience and one online. So.
Okay, yeah.
I just wanted to comment on something that you said a couple of weeks ago in the Crystal teaching that stuck with me, and it seems to be really relevant to what we're talking about right now. You said that healing only takes place when we develop skills. That's the only way that you can actually heal something. It's develop that set of skills so that you then are not traumatized, that you don't react later.
Yes.
I thought that was so interesting, and I think it kind of plays into what we're talking about right now.
Yes, it's basically the only way to not fall off the bike and hurt yourself is to learn how to ride the damn bike. It's that. So basically, whenever we hurt ourselves, and whenever we have not healed something in the past, when you understand you exist beyond time. So even if something happened 5 lifetimes ago, it's just a short moment, really. And it's always based on how we meet life with our skill set, and for that not to be enough. And then by experiencing the trauma at some point, after blaming and fighting and all of that, then we hopefully learn and we develop the skill. And then we're healed, because it's basically simply how to exist. It's not the story about how it happened, like when you fall off the bike, the whole story about what happened, right? About that person was over there, and this one, I was listening to that song. Like, you fell off the bike because you were not paying attention, because you don't know how to ride the bike yet. That's what you need to focus on. But how the brain works is through narrative. It's through stories, through storytelling. So the memory is basically connecting different pieces of information, right, into one tapestry, right? So it's all storytelling. And then often when it comes to working on our past and memories, we believe it's the story that needs to be healed. While the story is that contextual kind of space that is established for the brain to understand what it's dealing with. So yes, it always comes down to skills. And every healing in the universe is always about being out of sync and then being in sync. And for humans, that actually comes down to skills. When we talk about skills, it's not necessarily, how to use a hammer. It's also emotional skills, it's mental skills, it's spatial skills, it's process skills, it's spiritual skills, but it's always that. I say it's basically, a trauma is you not assembling the furniture correctly. You thought you did, but you got wonky furniture, and that hurts to sit on. And it will continue to be very uncomfortable until you redo it, but then you need to learn something. All right, and if we spend too much time just talking about how uncomfortable this is and who's to blame, and that this is really unpleasant for my back, and why does nobody care? If we do all of that, we're not learning how to fix the furniture. So in the universe, yes, it's always about looking at what skills did I not have? Back to taking responsibility. Back to looking, what do I have to change in order for this to work? Because that is evolution. So yes, how we heal, it's not by forgiving. It's by learning and applying what we learn in such a way that it actually works. Because forgiving, we direct that towards other people, but it really is about us letting go of the story. But that in itself does not necessarily mean that you develop new skills. So learning also to aim directly for the skills means that we can heal more rapidly.
Okay, we have a question from YouTube about the new paradigm, which we've spoken about more in the past, not as much recently, but she ties this together tonight with the victim consciousness in that you've talked a lot about that there are more souls incarnating of slightly higher consciousness helping to open this new paradigm. And yet, if we observe a lot of these new paradigm children, they tend to be very sensitive and tend to also land in some form of victim consciousness, especially in experiencing the world around them as not fitting them and the education system being inadequate, that kind of thing. She's wondering how to help them connect more with the world that is here and help them to bridge that gap.
Right. Yes. Historically, we're in a shift. We're in the beginning of it. And yes, there are millions and millions of individuals of higher consciousness. Doesn't mean that like a lot higher, but on a different evolutionary level, okay? Incarnating as humans to be part of this shift. But part of it means that a lot of how this world operates in our civilization makes no sense. What often happens is just look at how we humans operate now. Now, the more gadgets we have, right, and the more services we have, the less we do ourselves. If we go back 3 generations, every man could fix his own car, right? We could do stuff. We could build. Many people built their own houses or cabins, right? We were able to do stuff. And now we are not. We're becoming practically useless, right? So think of individuals having gone kind of further, right? And then they incarnate. That's basically like you then moving to a society where everybody has to be extremely handy. And all you can do is to like push a button on your iPhone, right? And that will be shocking. So many of those individuals, when they come to this planet, they're not used to dealing with this primitive way of being human. And then they don't know what to do with themselves. But they also choose to incarnate here to expose to themselves that, yeah, you lack foundation. And I'm not in your face, but it's basically you lack foundation strength. So basically they incarnate because they have a weakness. So when they try then to work on their karma and kind of learn how to be a productive human, they're then building the bridge. Because for this old world to move into the new one, you need individuals who are already there, right? And people who are in the old world, they don't know where we're heading. So when you have individuals who already operate there, right, they're the ones who have to kind of build the bridge. But they don't know how to build anything. So they incarnate also because they have that weakness in their system. So karmically, that's what they need. Because there is no such thing as sacrifice in the universe, right? So, because one can say, well, if they're so advanced, why do they come here? Oh, they're all here just to help. And no, they come here because they're useless. And they have then a consciousness that is necessary to point out direction for this planet. But they lack practical skills in how to operate in a more primitive civilization. So they need to build that foundation within them, and that's the exchange, that's a transaction. Because it means in them, you know, their consciousness mean that when the human society is then moving, it will be in that direction, because they will be the tuning fork collectively, right? So then the path is set, and this is why everything is going to work out. When you look at current humans, you wouldn't think so, but because of this process, where humans are heading, that course has been set and locked. And now all these useless people are incarnating, learning to parade themselves as useful humans, right? And they have to often learn how to deal with emotions, how to think, how to do things, how humans operate. And there are so many inconsistencies in the human culture right now, and they have to kind of learn. But it also means that if they have a strong foundation within themselves, they would be able to do it, right? Because we should be able to go into any previous level, right? When we have a strong foundation, we can do that. But often these individuals incarnate because they have a weakness in their structure, exactly where this planet needs to build a bridge to the next level, right? So there is an exchange. And it's fun. And it can be very frustrating for a lot of these individuals. And again, this is not uncommon. At this point, there are probably more than 200 million. Okay, so it's like, we're getting there. But still, they often end up being useless because they implode. When they meet the realities of this planet, they're not strong enough. So then they can play the victim because that they can learn. And that's, the greatest invention of modern society is victimization. So they can stay there, but inside of them, they will know that I'm not here to do that. And you see, some of them, they just like wither and die. But also some of them say like, no, I have to be me. I have to stand up. So they connect with themselves and then they get it. They are to reinvent, right? And you see so many young people, they're so wonderful, they're so strong, they're so connected. And they're also taking part in changing the world, right? They innovate, they take part, they take charge, they lead. But in a process like this, you must also expect that some are not able to do it. Sometimes, as with physical ambition, sometimes I can really do that, and you can't. Sometimes we incarnate in a place where I can totally do that, and we can't. And we get our own karma in our faces, and we implode. That's okay too. But overall, this is a wonderful process where more and more individuals of a kind of different consciousness incarnate to build the bridge. And they will also be the bridge in that they bring with them new ways of being human, new ways of thinking, new ways of using our emotions and creativity and togetherness and connectedness and all of that. So it is happening, and it's absolutely wonderful. But I said many of them are struggling, and we are not to help them. They need to be triggered in their own survival so that they build the bridge within. We cannot accommodate, because that means making them weaker. And we see so many of these people going out there and doing great things. So, it's not, we don't need to accommodate and pull them into victimization. If anything, we need to make them more ambitious, make them believe in themselves, but also make it very clear that you have to work, you have to build skills, you have to master your own survival before you can change the planet. Because otherwise, we will just be sitting there pointing to everything that's wrong and complain about it, and that's not changing the world. But this is happening, and this is like one of the many wonderful things happening on this planet right now. So, again, when we look at the craziness of the world, it's just human consciousness and individuals meeting their own karma. But the course is set, and we're moving towards it, and it will be absolutely magnificent. Mm-hmm.
We have one more question in the audience.
Yeah, you've many times talked about going past the individual and really creating greater things with an intention that is greater than yourself. And at the same time, like you talked about now, the ambition part, you have to also create from your own individual preferences and that physical ambition. So could you talk a little bit about those two perspectives? And also, is it like, do we have to have this physiological drive from survival also to create something greater than ourselves?
Yes, if we operate in a low consciousness. Because then the only incentive to move forward is if it's painful enough where you are. right? So then your spiritual evolution will be the physical evolution, right? So that's where most people are. They only do something if they're forced to, because they don't understand why they're here, where they're going, and the purpose of it. So they're limited by their own instincts and needs, and that's how they navigate, and that's okay. But back to why what you do is necessary first. Basically, you cannot touch people with your great music if you don't know how to play an instrument. So you have to learn that first, right? So becoming the best pianist you can possibly be, you'll have to do that first. Then you can touch people with your wonderful music, right? So it's always through what we develop in ourselves. There are a lot of people who have these great ideas. Oh, I want to change the world and lift the world, and they don't know how to do anything, right? You can only share what you have achieved, right? You can only basically give people the cake you've baked. So if you want to change the world, bake a lot of cake. You need to learn how to bake more efficiently and more. So it basically means that first, you do it for yourself, and then figure out, I really like to bake, I want to do more of it, and then you bake more than you can eat. That's often how it starts. Because you enjoy the process, and then you become even more streamlined. You can do it faster. There's no way you can eat all of that by yourself. So you need people to receive it. And then you're also disciplined, like maybe people like the cake a little bit different from you. And they say, oh, wow, I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for them. So let's bake the cake they want. This is basically the process, right? And it's only then, when you do the last part, that's purpose. Then you have merged what is kind of your path and your skills with what promotes growth outside of you. And we can all do it. We should all do it. And this, again, when we focus on ourselves, that's what leads to victimization and misery, right? Remember, as a life form, we have survived together through connectedness, through support, through nurturing each other, through taking care of each other and doing things together, and like all of that. It's all through connectedness and co-creation. And we've created a civilization where it's all about you as an individual, your needs, and the conflicts. Never about what you can contribute. It's about, are you being seen? What about you? And when we then create expectations about we should be met, blah, 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 it's never about the value we add. As I said, the level of disappointment in all areas will lead us into victimization and misery, and we will consume more. So what we often talk about, like as the next paradigm, is we have now a civilization where humans are being held as slaves for corporations and power. And to do that, we need to be held down through being miserable. Then the next level, and we will start seeing the beginning of it in about 100 years from now or so. That's the beginning of moving out of the tunnel. We're on our way into the tunnel. And it will be about purpose. It will be about putting humans first. So that will be the transformation, then understanding what is that? What does it mean? Right? It's not about then making everyone feel good, because that's not how you unfold. If you, for instance, have a talent and you want to develop that talent, that is painful. That is not pleasant, right? You will cry and you will injure yourself. You will hate what you do. You will blame the world, all of that, but over time, then you get it. That's how it is. So, we're moving into a civilization that will be kind of purpose-driven. It will take time, but we'll get there. Right now, we're in the opposite. This is also sometimes what's necessary for us, that we can't do that anymore, and then we move into the opposite direction. So we live in an absolute state of purposelessness. And everybody's hurting, everybody's self-medicating, everybody's miserable, everybody's destructive. And it's that. If we experience connectedness for real through the heart, we behave differently. Right? And we all know it. When we experience true connectedness, we have no need to self-medicate, because we are in a state of purpose. Right? So, and we learn that also by, when we are in a victim state, do things for others. Right? Practice connectedness. Go beyond your own needs and understand that your needs are not very interesting for other people. It is when we go beyond our needs, when we do something that is part of something greater than us, we will feel purpose. It's in our genes, it's in our consciousness. And this consumption, self-medication society is about the opposite, and making us all believe that that is the answer. And the more we focus on us, our needs and emotions, or self-medication, the worse it gets. And we can see it. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And we all have then the both opportunity and the responsibility for bringing ourselves out of it. So we need to find purpose. And then, when we start reflecting on purpose, often what we have a tendency to do is to make it about us. Right? What is my purpose? It's only purposeful, it's beyond you. So, so this is also something we need to figure out. It is when you, for real, are taking part in something greater than you, and it has that effect of stimulating unfoldment or healing in the world around you. And that is what will give you the sensation of purpose and love. It's not what you do, but humans start in the wrong direction, especially today. It's like, how can I find my purpose so I can feel important, and then I can share it to the world, right? It's not about that. Making yourself useful in a way that adds value, that's where we start. It sounds very mundane and boring, but this is actually, You can see that often when you go back in history. People hardly ever did anything they wanted to. But yet, they had a sense of accomplishment. They had a sense of purpose. They could have a sense of gratitude that are far beyond what humans today experience. Right? So fulfilling your needs and wants will not make you happy. It will make you miserable. Back to expectation. Seeking purpose, living purposefully. And that has to come from the heart, from connectedness. That is how we do it. But collectively, we've created this narrative that is completely nuts. And we have to see that we're all suffering because of it. We're all depressed because of it. We're all self-medicating because of it. We're all confused. All of that. And it's completely unnecessary. But it makes the world go around and it prints a lot of money. Right? But spiritually, when you are on a path of spirituality, you have to do better. You cannot be a slave and at the same time claim that you want spiritual freedom. When you are the one behaving as a slave, because again, they have not captured you, you're not in chains. You just say, take my money and give me what I want. For as long as you do that, that's where you are, right? So this is, you have to train yourself, because ultimately, this is about moving into spiritual leadership. Now this is the kind of important part of this. when you begin to wake up spiritually, you have an obligation to become a spiritual leader. And a spiritual leader lives in purpose, meaning that what you do and your goal beyond you is to influence in such a way that everyone around you unfolds, becoming more who they are, right? That they heal, that they increase their capacity for love and connectedness. And you do that by first doing it yourself, of course. Again, you have to learn how to play the piano first before you can do concerts. But that is really important. As that you have to practice yourself. You have to build credibility. A leader is simply someone who leads, and that means you're first. You're showing everyone else how it's done. So that when other people copy you and look to you and they do what you do, it will work. Right? So if you're faking it, and what you do is what you do, and then you're fake, and people copy that, they will get that result. Right? So it's doing the work for real, becoming solid, and then making that available through who you are. So it's working on yourself and refining yourself and unfolding yourself and doing all of that for real, and then being visible in some way, right? Through your example, and wanting other people to use you as inspiration. And understand that if you are just half-assing it, if you're faking it, that's the structure in the mirror and the matrix that you're offering. And then when people are copying that, they will get that result, right? Being honest and true and doing true work. That's how you become a spiritual leader. It's not about, when I say like leader, it's not about your ego and you becoming someone, and you being famous. It's about leading by example. It's by being in such a way that it affects others around you. And that impact will assist them in their own unfoldment, in their own way. Because if it's real, it will be universal. And by that I mean like we all are unfolding something unique. That's a true spiritual path. So when you figure something out for real, it will have a universal quality, just like gravity is the same for all, right? It's physics. So when you are able to practice and live truthfully, there will be universal qualities that others can kind of look to and copy. And one way to start also, if we think of how do we train our human brain, what I always advise people is to ask themselves the question, if everyone did this, what I'm doing right now, would that uplift the world or pull it down? It's a very simple way of thinking, but it can be shocking when we look at what we're doing, right? Because it can also be emotions, right? It can be thoughts, it can be attitudes, it can be things we say, things we do, because like who we are is basically who we are when nobody's watching. And understand that energetically, if we're with people, if someone is seeing us or not, we're in the same cosmic soup. It has the same effect. You can't be an asshole at home and then try to be all loving in public, right? It's what you are at all times. It's what you consistently do. This is why we have to do it for real. We have to purify, we have to do the work, we have to confront ourselves. So that what we are becomes a recipe, right? We become a kind of blueprint. We become something that people can look to, that they can be inspired by and affected by, and it will work. And it's not that difficult, but I think also it's that intention of absolute honesty, the intention of absolute responsibility, and learning how one becomes purposeful and like really just doing it. Remember that where the world is, and I've talked a lot about this when it comes to spirituality. Spirituality on this planet is completely corrupt. And it's for the most part just rehashed old stuff. And for the most part, it doesn't really work. Because what is lacking, some people are doing it, but for the most part, people are not. It's the actual work. It's the actual expansion of consciousness. And if you want to impact the world, if you want to lift, you have to be someone who vibrates truth. And truth is not what you want it to be, or what you believe, or your ego, or your stories. It's when you've cleansed that out, and you understand that you can never grasp truth. You can only get to the point of not being in the way of it. And that's the job. You cannot hold truth. You cannot represent it. It can come through if it wants to. But it's not yours, and it's not you. And you can't fake it. So that kind of honest approach to spirituality, and that we learn to do it for real, and that we decide to become leaders, we have to practice it in our own lives first. And by being an absolute leader means that you take full responsibility, you harness your skills, and you get results. Practically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And you set the example. And you always want people to look to you. You always want people to do what you're doing. Right? And aspiring to that level of honesty and true work is to me, it's kind of the essence of modern spiritual work. And we can all do it. I always say, I don't care what belief systems you have, what you think about this or that, and it's just, no. It's how you practice. It's how you live. It's your dedication. It's your love. It's seeing that you unfold, and that more truth is vibrating through you. The world needs leaders, because now there are more victims than ever. Right? And in our part of the world, it's an epidemic. And humans that used to be free are becoming slaves. It's a very peculiar change in human history. But they will not be able to find their way out without leadership. And if you at all are honest and ambitious spiritually, the way to uplift the world is to become a spiritual leader and then inspire people to wake up. You cannot be a spiritual leader and a victim at the same time. Right? So eradicating that from your life is not only important, it's without it you have no credibility. And then you can create in your life with what you've got. And to me also, you start with what you've got. Back to expectation. If you think that, well, I don't have that and I don't have that, and it should have been that, so there's no wonder I'm not able to do it. You know, if you look at people who can cook, no matter what ingredients they have available, if they have like a blunt knife and a pot, it's all they need, right? Because they know how to cook and they can create a delicious meal. But if you really don't know how to cook, it has to be this way, and I need my stuff, and I need this ingredient, you know, then you're not quite there. So it's getting to that level where you're doing it for real, where you're walking the path, and where you are in awareness. For most people, even in modern spiritual work, there are more steps between where you are and being able to do that than you think. But it takes practice, like daily practice. It takes having goals, truly working, trying to uplift and inspire and live purposefully. So it's not difficult in itself in theory, but, you know, crushing the whole victim complex in you, only you can do it. This is another thing, as we know, when back to life not owing you anything, it's also nobody's going to save you. Right? It's also that realization. You have to do it. Don't wait. Don't expect someone to come. You are where you are because that's your exact point of evolution, reflecting your exact skills, spiritually and physically. You deal with it. No one has ever been able to reach higher levels of consciousness without a lot of work, excruciating pain, a lot of, you know, self-reflection and confrontation and practice. It's when it comes down to it, over time we all walk the same path. It's equally as difficult. There's no such thing as someone reaching higher levels of consciousness with ease, right? It's just the difference in how much work we have put in. It's just that, and I'm telling you that there are no shortcuts, right? Your life is where it's at because of you, and you're also the solution, right? And learning that fully, practicing it, demonstrating it, and then using that as a way to assist other people in healing and growing and loving. It's how we can lift the world. Right? You can't sit in a corner and suck your thumb and claim to be in a high level of consciousness and I just want to lift the world. Right? And we see that a lot in modern spirituality. It's bullshit. If you truly want to help the world, become a billionaire. Right? That's probably more productive because then you have resources. You can do a lot more with that. So it's like, cut the bullshit. Your life reflects your actual skills, your actual consciousness, your actual evolution. The rest is up to you, right? And moving into that way of thinking and that attitude and that mindset, that is what will set you free. Do you have any more questions?
Do we have one in the audience? Yeah, looks like we do.
I found what you said about those monks very interesting, how their brain changed, and also that there's been a general brainwashing in a certain direction. And my question is it purposeful for us to kind of do specifically brainwashing in a different direction, or is it kind of just more letting go and going to a natural state? Like, and if it's purposeful to brainwash ourselves in a different direction, can we do like that? Like, is that something we can do like specifically, like proactively, daily or weekly or monthly?
Yes.
And how?
Well, you can study with me because that's really the point. And also, you know, we're now just starting a new cycle of our Crystal 5, which is a course where you kind of learn all of this, it takes an enormous amount of information and practice, because it's not just one practice. You have to practice everything in all spaces and learn how to basically build yourself and rebuild yourself and understand the universe. And you can't just sit and meditate and hope for the best. You can, but it will not give the results. If you want to advance spiritually, you have to study with someone who's done the job. So you can learn and you can practice, and this is what we're doing. So if you want to truly study and learn how, come study with me. There's still time to sign up. It takes daily practice, because the brainwash from the civilization is so overwhelming. It's so massive. It's everywhere, every day. Like, you know, there's not a single thing in our civilization which is not part of this now. So when you have that volume, you need to train yourself, because it's, in a way, it's not really washing, it's building skills. So you can see through it. And it takes practice and also understanding what types of practices and in what way and in which spaces. So everyone who's been studying with me for years know that I visit absolutely every possible angle on absolutely everything, because it's necessary. It's that comprehensive. And this is also what you see, for instance, there are examples of people meditating also, where they've seen the opposite, where their brains become smoother. And it's because they just let go of everything. And those are the ones often say, like, place them in the real world and see what happens. They fall over. They can't deal with things and they implode, right? But people have done the work, because this is, you know, they develop their spiritual skills and awareness and understanding, and often it's combined with studies through their traditions of knowledge, of all of that. So they develop, right? They develop their intelligence, their presence, like all of that. So the brain becomes more advanced. But just like, you know, let go of everything and sit in bliss, you can actually become more primitive. So yes, it is important that one understands the right types of practices. And I train people. So over time, all my students move in that direction. So what I do is, if you take the advanced studies from the hidden traditions, and you kind of make them available so that people living a modern life can also go into the deeper studies. That's what we're doing. And this is what it takes, right? Because again, this world is overwhelming and it's just getting worse. So it's not easy to wake up spiritually and to fully, in a way, harness your spiritual potential, but it is possible.
We have another question in the audience.
Yeah, I just, in my kind of circles, we have this saying, fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. And I've been asking you to give me another saying, and I got it today. It's like, practice till you make it.
Yes.
So that'll be my new.
Because it's actually not about faking it, right? And this is the thing. So fake it till you make it works to a certain level. But learning how to do something is actually not faking it. And this, when you look at I'm glad you brought it up, because it says a lot about how our society works, right? As long as it looks like purpose, it probably is, you know. But if you think of learning how to play the piano, faking it will not, you know, pretending to play the piano will not turn it into a pianist. And yet, so it's that, you know, right? but it's living it, which means practicing it for real. So it's, in a way, the intention behind it is living in the mindset of a winner, right? Learning what does it mean to be in higher consciousness, right? For instance, one example I've often used showing the confusion is that in modern spirituality and spirituality in general, there is this misunderstanding that higher consciousness and poverty is the same thing, and that you have to be poor to be in high consciousness. And this is because first, there is no connection between poverty and high consciousness. There is a connection between freedom and higher consciousness. Now, when you operate in a higher consciousness, you experience actual detachment. Actual detachment means that you're able to be intimately present with everything. But nothing sticks, because you understand that everything comes and goes, and everything is a reflection of your own state of consciousness. So you don't have to hold on to anything, because you understand that the externalized reality simply reflects your inner reality. So you say, well, if I hold on to something, it means I can only have that. If I let go, I can have everything, and it will come and go based on my consciousness, which is more interesting. And that often, from people who are not in that high consciousness, will say, well, he's got nothing, and he doesn't want himself to be controlled by things. So obviously one has to be poor. So I should practice giving away my stuff, and then I will be detached. The reality is you will just be poor. The thing is that someone who's able to be in a detached state has mastered the relationship between himself and life. So he's able to use absolutely every ingredient in the kitchen, absolutely every tool based on what he wants to make. And that can change every day, because once you've mastered every technique, you're not just doing one thing. But if a person is observing that person, and all he eats is hot dog, he can't see all the other stuff. So maybe he's making huge gourmet meals. He can't see it because there are no hot dogs, so there's nothing to eat. So he's obviously poor because there's no food. Wow. There's a lot of other things. In a higher consciousness, everything is rich. Everything is abundant. And because of that, you don't need to hold on to anything. Because you operate from the heart, you operate from the universe. But in a lower state of consciousness, when you try to achieve that, you look at what that person is doing and you don't understand it, and then you try to emulate it. And that's basically what religion is. And this is also why it doesn't work. And then you get fake it till you make it. And stuff like that. When it's really about having the practices that will bring you to your goals, and then also understanding what those goals are spiritually. Right? But for you and for everyone else, this is why we need to learn, why we need to study, and why it's so comprehensive, because the ego will twist it and turn it into something it's not, turning it into belief system and religion, and then it will lead you somewhere, and then it stops. My project is to assist everyone in getting more results than your efforts. And when you study comprehensively, you also get the kind of tapestry of information and practices, so that even your brain will start to understand there is something here, right? And you will be able to kind of move information from one place to the other, and the mind will start mapping things out. And that will enhance your learning and expansion even more. So The worst thing is when you are spiritually ambitious and then you find yourself in a dead end. My project is to assist everyone in not doing that. To be as productive spiritual as one can be, and to avoid doing whatever is not productive, that will not lead you to higher consciousness, that will not lead you to higher unfoldment. But show you what works. Give you the practices that works. And for you to, over time, learn to track your own journey, to track your own improvement and your own unfoldment, and also be able to see when you're blocking yourself and when you're not growing, so you can have an increased sense of freedom for real, so you can journey the way you want to in your own way. But it takes discipline, right? And back to what we're talking about today, setting yourself free from any and every kind of victimization. It's absolutely necessary. Although in our society it can be so difficult, right? Because we're all immersed in this together as humans. That's no excuse though. Because spiritually, you have to understand that your life is simply a reflection of your own consciousness. And when you realize that, and when that's your starting point, what other people are doing and why is of no consequence. In this lifetime, you can reach farther than you think. The kind of template for your lifetime is just a default setting. It is fully possible to have spiritual growth far beyond what has been planned, far beyond your karma, far beyond your homework. And that's where all the fun is. That's how you can also uplift the world, and how we can truly take part in kind of recreating this planet and reimagining this life form, this collective consciousness of humans. And I invite everyone who wants to be part of it. You don't have to settle for the old stuff. You don't have to settle for the collective human consciousness and the human culture and civilization. You have a lot more in you. And when you learn how to set yourself free, you can fully let all of that blossom. And then you will truly be a spiritual leader, and then you will truly inspire the world and uplift and be one of those who truly set course for all humanity to follow.
Thank you so much, IKYA, and thank you all for joining us both online and here at IKYA Center for IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective, and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice in your everyday life. And boy, have we gotten an amazing amount of beautiful advice to live our best lives. So let's get out there and do that. And IKYA Live is now coming to you on the third Monday of each month. So we will see you next time on Monday, the 16th of September at the same time, 19 o'clock, 7 p.m. Oslo time. We look forward to seeing you then. And until then, be well.